All right, in class we are talking about supply and demand, and we're using a basically equation-based approach. Now, we aren't touching the algebra, but we are drawing lines and we are implicitly in the background doing algebra. Our conception of an equilibrium is where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied, and so it's us as the economists solving things from the top down, which is okay for a model, but it's not terribly realistic. So what I've got here, this is something from a class I did a few years ago on agent-based modeling. This model is not perfect. There are some mistakes I found the first time I was looking through this morning, but it gives us a different way to think about supply and demand, and it gets us very similar results. So what we've got here is we've got 250 buyers and 250 sellers, and we're arranging them in this space. Where they are in this space doesn't actually mean anything, but each individual one of them, if we inspect them, what we will see is that we've got some parameters about them. So this is agent number 7. They've got a color, they've got a direction they're facing, they've got some coordinates, but what's important is that they are marked as a buyer. They are marked as having 0 surplus, having a reservation price of 81. So this is them saying, I expect to get $81 worth of value out of the good that I'm trying to buy in this market. They do not have the item yet, so they are still going to keep trying to buy, and they don't have an asking price because they're not asking to sell it. If we look at a seller, we're going to see similar sorts of things. This is seller or agent number 317. They have the item. Their reservation price is $79, so they're not willing to sell for less than $79. If they can get more than that, they're happy. If not, they'd prefer to make $0 than to lose money. So what these agents are going to do is they're going to interact with each other. Buyers and sellers are going to get together, and if the seller is offering a low enough price and the buyer values it enough, they can make an exchange. Now we also have this option to resell. So for example, if this buyer down here with a very low benefit to this good happens to buy it from a seller with an extra low cost, they're in a position where they might resell to someone who wants this good more than they do. Right? So you imagine you go to Black Friday sale, you get a TV for $50, and then you realize, you know what, I've got 8 TVs at home, I don't need this. You sell it on eBay for $100, you're better off. The person who bought it from you is better off. The only person who missed out in this case is Best Buy, who sold you the TV for $50 in the first place. But that's going to help this model to move resources into the high-valued uses. But let's start with turning that off. We also have the option of imposing a tax, and we can make that positive for a regular tax or negative for a subsidy. And then we've got some options for price controls. So all of this is governed in the back end by code that is telling all of these agents what to do, right? So we've got different kinds of agents. They have different information inside of them. We have setup processes. Part of the setup process is to arrange them based on where they are. And as we'll see when we run this, our agents turn to small gray agents instead of big red and blue agents if they successfully make a trade. So our buyers who buy, they turn small and gray just so we can see what's going on. And what we can see is with this round, these sellers still have this unit available. They still could sell, but their reservation price is high. These buyers could buy, but their reservation price is low. So they're not expecting enough benefit to justify the cost of buying from them. And we end up with an efficiency level of 88%, which is not 100, but it's not terrible. So here we've got decentralized choices. We aren't looking at the equations and saying, this is where the 2 lines cross, this is the best possible location. Instead, we're letting these agents kind of try stuff. And we can see if you look close, you'll have to zoom way in on your screen, put this up on your TV. You'll see little gray squares down here where some buyers were able to buy even though they had a very low benefit. So let's turn on resell. This allows them to do that. Let's see if I can actually, we can do a few more rounds, and what ends up happening is our efficiency bumps up a little bit, And basically, these people were able to resell to some of these people. All right, let's set it up, try it again. We can do this a few times, and this is kind of semi-random. Well, it is random, but with this randomness and this decentralized action by these agents, we still get something very similar to the model of regular supply and demand, where we set up the equations and we say, where does quantity demanded equals quantity supply? What market price do we get? In this case, we got a market clearing price of 48, although any individual agent didn't necessarily get it at that price. So let's take a look at buyer number 163. They have the item, their reservation price is 74, their surplus is 27, which means that they got, what is that? 54 minus 51. Their reservation price was 51-ish, something like that. Their initial, or the price that they got, right? The reservation price was 74, and they bought it cheaply, right? They bought it $27 less than that price. And that's how we can have the computer add up everyone's surplus to figure out how did the model do overall compared to how it might have done under ideal circumstances. So right there, we've got just an interesting way to view this problem, an interesting alternate story that matches up with the story that we're telling in the textbook and in class where we're using equations. But in real life, it's much more like this. You as a buyer go out and you see, can I get a good enough deal to justify buying this? And if you don't, then you don't buy. You're down at the bottom of the demand curve. So let's mess around with this a little bit. Let's put in a price floor of $86. So we can't sell for less than 86. What ends up happening? It's going to take longer to solve, well, less long to solve this than I expected. We solved this in one tick. That's one round of buying and selling. And what we can see is only these buyers way up at the top were able to buy, and our efficiency was much lower than we got otherwise, than we got if we let the price fluctuate. So with this high minimum price, we're only going to buy if we really, really need this product. Most of the buyers don't end up getting it at all, and you can see very few sellers are able to sell. Which sellers are selling? If we look close, there's some gray spots in here. So there are certainly some sellers who are selling who have higher costs than some sellers who weren't able to sell. So unlike the model in the textbook, we don't just say we're going to draw a line here and our deadweight loss triangle over here, and these sellers sell and these buyers buy. In this case, only these buyers could buy, but this seller, their cost was below the price floor, so there's nothing stopping a seller from way up here from actually selling. And in fact, I think if we look at this, well, I'm going to have to zoom in too close, but I can see a little gray dot here, which means we had a really high cost seller selling at this really high price, even though we could have gotten the same product at much, much lower cost. That's one of the other deadweight losses we end up with price controls. We end up with a misallocation. In this case, the misallocation is that we get the wrong sellers. We get high cost sellers when we could have gotten a ceteris paribus good from a low cost seller. Let's put that price floor back down to 0, and let's make a price ceiling of 18. It's kind of ridiculous, but just to be dramatic, when we run it like this, we're going to have a few more ticks. We're going to have some reselling from the buyers, and we can see we only are getting this from the low-cost sellers. If you look close, there are some buyers here who probably should be reselling, but regardless, we end up with not getting any of the high-cost sellers. We do get some high-benefit sellers, but we're also getting some low-benefit sellers. So again, we're getting some of that misallocation. It's not just a matter of we only get the left side of the supply and demand graphs. It's we only get the left end of the supply curve, and we could get any part of the demand curve above this price ceiling. Anyone who values it above 18, let's see if we can catch this. Buyer 35, color 105. Do they have it? They don't have it. But you can see right next to them that there is someone, a neighbor to buyer 35, who bought this, even though we can tell based on where they are in the graph that their reservation price, their marginal benefit from this, was much, much lower than other buyers who went without this product. So when we put in price controls, we can see some of that inefficiency that doesn't automatically drop out of the graph. If we throw in a tax, let's just make a big dramatic tax, what we're going to see is that we end up similarly with not as many transactions happening as we would have without the tax. So again, this is part of the model that's broken. It's not really 97% efficiency. I haven't looked at this code in 3 or 4 years, so I got to go through and figure out what's going on there. But we can definitely see that we shrink the market. And if we have a negative tax, we're going to end up past our market clearing equilibrium. You can see that we're getting high cost sellers engaged in this market and relatively low benefit buyers. And so here we're getting deadweight loss from having too much of a good thing. So if you want to play around with this is a really cool program called NetLogo. Send me an email or send me a message on Discord and I can send you some links to how to start this, and I'll send you this code if you want to try and figure out how to fix my efficiency reporter. Any other questions, let me know in the usual places, and I will talk to you in the future.